Deep beneath the earth, hidden in the shadowed chambers of royal tombs, lie secrets that have whispered through the centuries. These silent, sacred spaces were never meant to be disturbed, yet within their walls, they hold clues to the beliefs, fears, and grandest rituals of civilizations long gone. Imagine standing at the threshold of one of these ancient crypts, the air thick with dust and the weight of history. What would you find? Golden treasures, yes, but also objects so strange, so utterly cryptic, they defy modern understanding. Today, we're stepping into the darkness to uncover 30 of these enigmatic burial items, each one a puzzle left behind by kings, queens, and empires determined to carry their mysteries into the afterlife. The rulers of old didn't bury mere trinkets with their dead. These were carefully chosen relics infused with meaning we can only begin to grasp. Some were meant to protect, others to guide, and a few, well, perhaps they were meant to terrify. From tiny, intricately carved figurines with hollow eyes to sprawling, otherworldly masks that seem to watch you across the millennia, these artifacts aren't just historical curiosities. They're windows into forgotten worlds where death wasn't an end but a passage, and where every object placed in the tomb had a role to play in the journey beyond. What drove these cultures to bury their rulers with such strange and elaborate offerings? Was it love, power, fear, or something even deeper? As we unravel the stories behind these 30 cryptic treasures, you'll discover how a single burial item can rewrite history, challenge our assumptions, and even send shivers down the spine of the bravest archaeologist. This isn't just a catalogue of ancient artifacts. It's an expedition into the unknown, where every relic has a tale to tell, and where the line between the living and the dead blurs in the flickering torchlight of the tomb. So take a deep breath, we're about to cross that threshold together. Buried deep within the tomb of Prince Liu Sheng, a nobleman of China's Han Dynasty over 2,000 years ago, lies one of the most astonishing artifacts ever uncovered, a suit made entirely of jade. Not just a single piece, but thousands of delicate jade plaques, each carefully shaped and polished, then painstakingly sewn together with fine gold thread. This wasn't mere decoration. The ancient Chinese believed jade held mystical properties. It could ward off decay, preserve the body, and even carry the soul into immortality. For a prince like Liu Sheng, death wasn't the end, it was a transition. And this suit was his armor for the journey. The craftsmanship is staggering. Each tiny jade tile was cut to fit the contours of the body, with openings for the face, hands, and feet. The gold threads weren't just functional. They symbolized the unbreakable connection between the earthly and the divine. Jade itself was considered the stone of heaven, a bridge between the mortal world and the afterlife. To wear jade in death was to cheat time itself, to keep the body incorruptible until the soul could ascend. But why go to such lengths? The Han Dynasty's elite were obsessed with the idea of physical immortality. Alchemists concocted potions, mystics sought elixirs, and emperors built elaborate tombs, all in pursuit of eternal life. The jade burial suit was the ultimate insurance policy. If the body remained intact, so too would the spirit. Archaeologists who uncovered Liu Sheng's tomb found his jade suit still wrapped around his bones, the gold threads glinting faintly in the lamplight after centuries in darkness. It's a haunting sight, one that makes you wonder, did the prince's spirit truly find its way, or was this magnificent suit just a beautiful, futile attempt to defy the inevitable? Every stitch in that gold thread, every polished fragment of jade, speaks of a civilization's deepest hopes and fears. Today, we study these suits as marvels of ancient artistry, but to those who made them, they were so much more. They were a defiant whisper against the silence of the grave. Few artifacts capture the imagination quite like the golden Death Mask of Tutankhamun. This breathtaking masterpiece, discovered resting atop the mummy of the young pharaoh, isn't just a symbol of ancient Egypt. It's a gateway into a world where death was an art form and gold was the skin of the gods. Crafted with staggering precision, the mask depicts Tutankhamun's serene, idealized face, framed by the striped Neme's headcloth and adorned with the royal cobra and vulture, symbols of divine authority. But this wasn't mere portraiture. To the Egyptians, the mask was a vessel. It transformed the deceased king into a god, ensuring his safe passage into the afterlife. The materials alone tell a story of devotion. Over 24 pounds of solid gold, inlaid with lapis lazuli, quartz, and obsidian, each element chosen for its sacred properties. Gold was the flesh of the sun god Ra, eternal and unchanging, while lapis lazuli mirrored the night sky, a realm the pharaoh's soul would traverse. Every detail, from the stylized beard to the inscriptions of protective spells, served a purpose. Even the eyes, lined with black coal, seem alive, designed to see into both this world and the next. Then there's the so-called curse. When Howard Carter's team unearthed the tomb in 1922, rumors spread like wildfire. Deaths, misfortunes, and eerie coincidences were blamed on a pharaoh's vengeance. Yet the truth is far more human. Mold spores in sealed chambers, combined with the press's love of melodrama. The real magic of Tutankhamun's mask lies not in curses but in craftsmanship. The anonymous artisans who shaped it didn't just preserve a king's face, they captured a civilization's deepest belief that memory, beauty, and divinity could conquer time itself. Stand before this mask today, and you're not just looking at gold, you're witnessing 3,000 years of unbroken faith, a testament to what happens when art, religion, and mortality collide. Buried in silent formation for over 2,000 years, the Terracotta Army stands as one of history's most astonishing acts of devotion, an entire clay battalion waiting to serve their emperor beyond death. When farmers digging a well in 1974 struck the head of a life-sized soldier, they unearthed not just a statue but a subterranean world frozen in time. Thousands of these warriors, each with unique facial features, armor, and even hairstyles, were crafted to accompany China's first emperor, Qin Shi Huang, into eternity. This wasn't just a grand burial, it was a declaration of power that transcended the grave. What makes these figures so extraordinary isn't just their sheer numbers. Estimates suggest over 8,000 soldiers, plus horses and chariots, but the startling individuality etched into every face. No two soldiers are alike. Some wear expressions of determination, others seem lost in thought, as if frozen mid-battle. Their armor reflects precise military ranks, from infantry to officers. While their weapons were real, many still sharp enough to draw blood when discovered. The craftsmanship defies belief. Clay ears shaped to catch whispers, fingernails carved with precision, even the tread on their shoes showing meticulous detail. These weren't mass-produced props, they were meant to be functional guardians, a literal army for the afterlife. Yet the greatest mysteries lie deeper. The tomb complex sprawls across nearly 38 square miles, with the emperor's burial chamber itself still largely untouched. Ancient texts describe rivers of liquid mercury, booby traps to deter thieves, and a ceiling studded with jewels to mimic the night sky. Modern scans reveal unnaturally high mercury concentrations in the soil, hinting at truth behind the legends. Why hasn't the central tomb been opened? Archaeologists fear disturbing its delicate artifacts or unleashing trapped toxins, though some suspect there's another reason. Maybe, after 2 millennia, we still aren't ready for what Qin Shi Huang took with him. The Terracotta Army raises haunting questions. Was this a display of imperial ego or a profound act of spiritual preparation? Did the emperor truly believe these silent soldiers would fight for him in another realm? Their hollow eyes stare back at us across the centuries, keeping their secrets as jealously as the tomb they were sworn to protect. Among history's vanished treasures, few have sparked as much obsession as the Amber Room, a chamber so dazzling it was called the 8th wonder of the world. Gifted to Russia's Peter the Great in 1716 by Prussia's King Frederick William I, this wasn't just a room, it was a golden jigsaw puzzle. Over 6 tons of amber panels, backed with gold leaf and studded with mirrors, gemstones, and intricate mosaics, formed walls that glowed like captured sunlight. The amber itself, fossilized tree resin, was carved into delicate floral patterns, mythological scenes, and coats of arms, each piece radiating warmth even in the dim candlelight of the Prussian court. It was a masterpiece of Baroque artistry designed to make visitors feel they'd stepped inside a jewel, but the amber room's fate is shrouded in intrigue. When Nazi forces invaded Russia in 1941, they dismantled the entire chamber, packed the panels into crates, and shipped them to Königsberg Castle, a seemingly secure stronghold. Then, as the war turned against Germany, the trail went cold. Some believe the crates were destroyed in Allied bombings, while others insist they were smuggled away, hidden in salt mines, sunken ships, or even sealed within secret bunkers. The most tantalizing theory, that the amber panels were buried alongside Frederick the Great himself, tucked into his tomb as a final, arrogant tribute to Prussian might. Decades of searches have turned up only fragments, a single mosaic recovered in 1997, a smuggler caught with a small amber inlaid cabinet. Yet the hunt continues, fueled by coded diaries, soldier testimonies, and modern ground-penetrating radar scans. The amber room represents more than lost wealth. It's a ghost of vanished empires, a relic of wars where art became spoils. To uncover it would be to solve one of history's greatest riddles, but perhaps some treasures are meant to stay lost, their legends brighter than any rediscovery could ever be. Deep in the humid jungles of Chiapas, Mexico, archaeologists uncovered an object so strange it seems pulled from the pages of science fiction, the Crystal Skull of Palenque. Carved from a single block of flawless quartz, this eerily lifelike artifact mirrors a human skull down to the smallest detail, with hollow eye sockets that seem to stare right through you. According to legend, it was discovered in the 1950s among the ruins of a Mayan temple near the tomb of the great ruler Pakal the Great, but here's where things get murky. Some claim the skull is a genuine relic of the ancient Maya, imbued with psychic energy or even the power to see the future. Others insist it's an elaborate fake, crafted in the 19th century to feed Europe's obsession with exotic artifacts. The mystery deepens when you consider the skull's origins, or lack thereof. Unlike most Mayan artifacts, there's no record of its excavation. No photographs, no field notes, just a trail of vague stories and dramatic claims. The skull's surface shows no signs of tool marks, leading some to believe it was shaped by methods beyond ancient technology, perhaps even lost crystal carving techniques whispered about in indigenous oral histories. Yet skeptics point out that quartz crystal of this purity would have been nearly impossible for the Maya to obtain, let alone carve with such precision. Modern analysis reveals grooves consistent with rotary tools from the 1800s, not stone or bone implements used by ancient artisans. Then there's the connection to Pakal's tomb. The Maya believed crystal could channel the voices of ancestors, and skulls symbolized rebirth, fitting for a king's burial. But if the skull is a fraud, why place it near one of Mesoamerica's most sacred sites? Was it a deliberate hoax to monetize mythology, or is there a sliver of truth buried beneath the lore? The Crystal Skull of Palenque remains an enigma, a relic caught between history and legend, science and superstition. Whether ancient artifact or modern confection, its allure is undeniable. It forces us to wonder, do some objects hold power because we believe they do? And in the end, does it even matter when the story itself becomes the treasure? Draped in gold and cradling secrets of the afterlife, the golden death crown of Silla is more than a royal accessory, it's a bridge between worlds. Discovered in the tomb of a long-forgotten queen from Korea's ancient Silla kingdom, this masterpiece gleams with an otherworldly elegance. Delicate gold branches sprout upward like a sacred tree, each limb dotted with shimmering jade ornaments that dangle like celestial fruit. But this wasn't just a symbol of status. To the Scylla people, the crown was a living map guiding the queen's spirit through the cosmic realms beyond death. The craftsmanship borders on divine. Thin sheets of gold, hammered until they seem to breathe, form the crown's base, while dangling jade gogok, those teardrop-shaped pendants, catch the light like frozen dewdrops. The tree motif is unmistakable, echoing the sacred Samsu trees of Korean mythology, which connected heaven, earth, and the underworld. Every curve and cluster of jade was intentional, a visual prayer for the queen's ascent. Even the weight of the crown carried meaning. Wearing it, she would have felt the physical pull of the spiritual realm, a constant reminder of her destiny among the gods. Yet the crown's true power lies in its paradox. For all its fragility, those gold branches could bend with a touch. It was made to endure eternity. Archaeologists found it resting near the queen's skull, undisturbed for over 1,000 years, as if time itself had honored its purpose. Unlike the heavy golden diadems of Europe, this crown wasn't about earthly dominance. Its delicate, almost floating design suggests something purer, a belief that the soul, like those jade pendants, was suspended between worlds, ready to swing free when the moment came. What did the Scylla people see when they looked at this crown? Not just gold and stone, but a ladder of light, each rung a step closer to immortality. Today, it sits in a museum, silent and radiant, but if you listen closely, perhaps you can still hear the whisper of leaves in a wind that blows between the living and the dead. In the shadowed chambers of Aztec royal tombs, one object held more power than gold: the obsidian mirror of Tezcatlipoca, a polished black surface that was less a reflection of this world than a window into the next. Fashioned from volcanic glass so sharp it could split light into shadows, these mirrors were buried with kings as passports to the unseen. To gaze into one wasn't just to see your face, it was to stare into the smoking breath of destiny itself, where the god of night and sorcery whispered secrets only the dead were meant to hear. Obsidian was no ordinary stone to the Aztecs. Born from the fury of erupting volcanoes, it carried the violence of creation within its glassy depths. When polished to a mirror's sheen, it became Tezcatl, a sacred tool for divination. The most powerful of these mirrors belonged to Tezcatlipoca, the smoking mirror, a deity who wielded chaos and change as casually as a blade. His priests used these mirrors to scry the future, interpreting flickering shapes in the obsidian like astronomers reading stars. But in a ruler's tomb, the mirror took on a darker role. It was a one-way gate meant not for the living to peer forward, but for the dead to look back, guiding their descendants from beyond the grave. The craftsmanship was as precise as it was perilous. Obsidian fractures like frozen lightning, and shaping it into a flawless disc required hands steadied by ritual. Surviving examples, like the mirror in the British Museum, reveal surfaces so smooth they distort reflections into eerie, liquid swirls. The edges were often wrapped in gold or jade, not for decoration but as a warning. This was no vanity piece. Touch it carelessly, and the mirror would cut as deeply as the truths it revealed. What did Aztec kings see in their final moments staring into these mirrors? Visions of empires rising and falling, omens etched in smoke and fire, or did they glimpse something far more intimate? The moment their own names would fade from memory, swallowed by time's unblinking black glass. Modern archaeologists still debate whether these mirrors were tools of prophecy or psychological weapons, designed to unsettle enemies and allies alike. One thing is certain: when buried with a ruler, the mirror wasn't just an artifact. It was a last act of defiance, a sovereign's final claim to power over the one force even kings couldn't command: the unknowable future. Today, these mirrors sit in museum cases, their surfaces dulled by centuries, but stand close enough and you might catch your own reflection warping in the glass, a fleeting reminder that the line between past and present, like the edge of an obsidian blade, is sharper than it seems. Beneath a mound of Norwegian soil, undisturbed for over 1,000 years, lay a vessel fit for a queen's final voyage, the Oseberg ship. Discovered in 1904, this stunning Norse burial site wasn't just a grave, it was a floating palace of the dead, its oak hull packed with treasures that defied decay. Imagine the scene, a 70-foot-long ship, its prow carved into coiled serpents, dragged inland and lowered into a trench. Inside, 2 women, one likely a revered queen or seeress, were laid to rest on a bed of feather pillows, surrounded by sledges, tapestries, and even a cart with intricately woven wheels. But why bury a ship on dry land? To the Vikings, this wasn't madness. It was preparation for the most important journey of all. The Oseberg ship tells us more about Viking beliefs than any saga. These were a people who lived by the sea, and it was only fitting they'd sail into the afterlife. The ship's contents read like an inventory for the underworld: 15 horses, 4 dogs, and a chest filled with seeds and farming tools, provisions for the next world. The tapestries, though faded now, once blazed with scenes of processions and battles, perhaps depicting the queen's arrival in Valhalla or Folkvanga, the goddess Freyja's hall. Even the sledges, polished smooth by use, weren't mere status symbols. Frozen rivers in the Norse afterlife would need crossing, and what better way than on runners gliding through eternal winter? Yet the burial's most haunting detail is its urgency. The ship was sealed in the early 9th century, a time when Norway's petty kingdoms clashed. Was this queen's send-off a desperate bid to secure her favor in the afterlife? Or something darker? One woman's skeleton shows signs of a swift, violent death, possibly a sacrificial offering. The Vikings believed power lingered in the bones of the mighty, and what better guardian for a shipload of treasures than a spirit bound by oath? Standing before the Oseberg ship today, its serpentine curves preserved in Oslo's museum, you can almost hear the whispers of that final ceremony. The crunch of gravel as the ship was pushed into the earth, the murmur of runes carving protection into wood, the silence that followed when the mound was sealed. This wasn't just burial, it was launch day, the beginning of a voyage without end, where the line between vessel and coffin blurred into something far stranger. The Vikings didn't fear death, they outfitted for it. On the wind-swept Paracas Peninsula of Peru, where the desert meets the crashing Pacific, the dead were dressed for eternity in layers of woven wonder. The mummy bundles of Paracas aren't just preserved bodies, they're intricate time capsules, swaddled in textiles so vivid and complex, they seem to pulse with color even after 2,000 years. Picture this, a single bundle the size of a small trunk, containing not just a mummy but up to 20 layers of embroidered cloth, each more dazzling than the last. Crimsons deeper than blood, golds that mimic sunlight, geometric patterns so precise they'd challenge modern looms. But the real shock comes when unraveling reveals what lies beneath: skulls stretched into impossible shapes, elongated like teardrops toward the heavens. These weren't accidents of nature. The Paracas culture practiced cranial deformation, binding infants' heads with cloth and wooden boards to reshape their skulls over years. Why? Some scholars argue it marked elite status, a visual divide between the ruling class and ordinary citizens. Others see spiritual intent, these elongated forms mimicking the silhouette of their gods, or perhaps aspiring to reach closer to the celestial realms. The textiles tell their own story. Woven into the fabric are motifs of mythical beings, double-headed serpents, and figures with streaming tears, symbols that recur across Andean cultures, hinting at shared beliefs about death as a transformative passage. What makes these bundles extraordinary is their intimacy. Unlike the grand stone tombs of Egypt, Paracas burials feel intensely personal. Bodies were folded into the fetal position, wrapped in cloth dyed with minerals and shellfish pigments, then secured with ropes as if being gently rocked to sleep. Some bundles include offerings, gourds filled with food, tiny gold ornaments, or seashells from distant coasts. It's as if the living were trying to pack an entire lifetime of comfort into these cocoons, ensuring their loved ones wanted for nothing in the next world. The patterns themselves are a language lost to time. Zigzags that might represent mountains or lightning, step designs echoing temple architecture, embroidered eyes that seem to watch from beyond. Modern weavers in Peru still struggle to replicate the fineness of these ancient textiles, which boast over 300 threads per inch, a density surpassing even the finest Egyptian linens. Was this artistry a form of prayer, each stitch a whispered hope for the deceased, or a defiant act of beauty against the relentless desert sun, which could bleach bones to dust in years if not shielded by these radiant layers? Today, the mummy bundles raise as many questions as they answer. Were the elongated skulls a sign of aristocracy or a ritual bridging humanity and the divine? Did the vibrant colors, some still unnaturally bright, hold coded messages for the afterlife? As archaeologists carefully unpeel each layer, they're not just studying fabric and bone. They're handling the delicate edges of a belief system where death wasn't an end, but a metamorphosis where the body, swaddled like a seed in its textile husk, was only waiting for the right moment to bloom anew. Fragments of ivory, scattered like broken teeth across the ruins of Knossos, whisper of a throne fit for a king who straddled the line between history and myth. When archaeologists pieced together these delicate remains, they revealed the ivory throne of King Minos, not just a seat of power, but a portal to the labyrinthine world of Minoan ritual. Carved from hippopotamus ivory imported from distant Egypt, its curved backrest and lion-clawed legs speak of a civilization that traded in both luxury and legend. This wasn't mere furniture. To sit upon it was to commune with the bull of the sun, to channel the same primal forces that birthed the myth of the Minotaur. The throne's design is a riddle wrapped in symbolism. Flanking its sides are frescoes of griffins, mythical guardians with the bodies of lions and the heads of eagles, their wings outstretched as if shielding the ruler from mortal eyes. Scholars argue these creatures weren't decoration but sentinels for the afterlife, mirroring the beasts painted on the walls of the palace of Knossos, where bull-leaping athletes danced with death. The ivory itself held divine significance. To the Minoans, it represented purity and strength, a material as rare and untamed as the king who wielded it. But why place a throne in a tomb? Here, the threads of archaeology and myth tangle. Ancient texts describe Minos ruling from his throne even in death, judging souls in the underworld as he once judged the living. The ceremonial throne rooms of Knossos, with their blood-red walls and subterranean pools, suggest rituals where kings may have symbolically descended to the realm of the dead, perhaps seated on this very ivory chair. Some fragments bear traces of cinnabar, a mercury-based pigment sacred to underworld deities, hinting at rites where the throne became an altar. The connection to the Minotaur is impossible to ignore. Beneath Knossos lay tunnels so complex they may have inspired the labyrinth myth. Could the throne have been central to bull cult ceremonies, where rulers donned horned masks to embody the Minotaur's duality, half king, half beast? Or was it a plea for protection, its ivory gleaming like moonlit bone against the darkness of the crypt? Today, the reconstructed throne sits in Heracleon's museum, its missing pieces filled with careful plaster. Visitors circle it cautiously, as if expecting the ghosts of griffins to stir. Perhaps they sense what the Minoans knew: some thrones aren't meant for the living. They're vessels crafted to carry kings beyond the maze of mortality, where power isn't measured in gold but in the weight of legacy. Hidden beneath the rubble of a 7th-century burial cave near Jerusalem, 2 tiny silver scrolls, no wider than a pencil, unlocked secrets that would rewrite religious history. Known as the Ketef Hinnom amulets, these delicate cylinders were found curled around the skeletal fingers of priests, their surfaces etched with minuscule Hebrew script so fine that researchers needed microscopes to read them. At first glance, they might seem unremarkable, just bits of tarnished metal. but unrolled and deciphered, they revealed the oldest surviving biblical texts ever found, predating the famous Dead Sea Scrolls by nearly half a millennium. These weren't mere burial trinkets, they were sacred armor wrapping the dead in the words of God Himself. What makes these scrolls extraordinary isn't just their age, around 2,600 years old, but the words they preserve. One carries a variation of the priestly blessing from the Book of Numbers. May the Lord bless you and keep you. May the Lord make His face shine upon you. These phrases weren't just comforting verses. They were spells of protection designed to shield the wearer from evil forces in the afterlife. Imagine the painstaking labor, a scribe engraving each letter onto pliable silver, knowing the amulet would be sealed in darkness for eternity. The inkless writing technique, pressing strokes directly into metal, meant no room for error. One slip of the stylus and the scroll became ritually void. Their discovery in 1979 shattered assumptions about ancient Judaism. Scholars had long believed such personalized blessings emerged much later. But here was proof that everyday people, not just temple elites, carried scripture close, literally woven into their funerals. The scrolls also hint at a thriving folk religion where formal worship blended with deeply personal magic. The way the silver was folded suggests it was touched, perhaps even kissed, in moments of fear or hope. These priests didn't just recite blessings, they wore them like spiritual chainmail. Yet the greatest marvel might be their survival. Jerusalem's turbulent history saw temples razed and treasures looted, but these scrolls endured, tucked safely within their cave as empires rose and fell around them. Carbon dating places them just decades before the Babylonians destroyed Solomon's temple, meaning they likely witnessed that cataclysm. Were they buried in haste as invaders approached? Or were they always meant for the grave, ensuring the priests carried divine favor into the unknown? Today, the scrolls reside in Jerusalem's Israel Museum, displayed under low light to protect their fragile sheen. Modern scans reveal words now invisible to the naked eye, hinting at more layers of text waiting to be decoded. They remind us that sometimes history's loudest whispers come not from grand monuments, but from objects small enough to curl inside a clenched fist, silver threads connecting us to voices that refuse to be silenced. At the heart of Mexico's Oaxaca Valley, where the ancient Zapotec city of Monte Albon once crowned the mountains, archaeologists uncovered a predator frozen in stone, the onyx jaguar. Carved from a single block of gleaming black onyx, this snarling feline wasn't just a decorative grave good. It was a declaration buried alongside a 9th-century ruler as both a warning and a promise. Every curve of its arched back, every etched whisker radiating from its muzzle, speaks of a civilization where power wasn't just held, it was embodied in the form of the jungle's most feared hunter. The craftsmanship is unnervingly lifelike. The jaguar's muscles seem tense to pounce, its paws outstretched as if mid-strike, bearing claws sharp enough to cast shadows. Onyx, with its volcanic glass sheen, catches light in a way that makes the beast appear to move in flickering torchlight. But this wasn't artistry for artistry's sake. To the Zapotec, jaguars were more than animals. They were nahuales, shape-shifting spirits that rulers could channel in battle or visions. Burying a ruler with this statue wasn't just symbolic, it was a metaphysical transfer of the creature's ferocity. Ritual marks tell a darker story. The jaguar's back is hollowed into a shallow basin, its surface stained with traces of iron oxide, likely residue from bloodletting ceremonies. Rulers may have placed offerings here, perhaps even their own blood, to feed the jaguar spirit before major wars or succession battles. A small channel carved along the statue's base suggests liquid could flow from the basin, as if the stone beast drank in real time. Some scholars argue this was part of a breathing ritual, where the jaguar's spirit was momentarily revived to bless the ruler's journey into the afterlife. Yet the most chilling detail lies in its placement. The statue wasn't tucked gently beside the tomb's occupant, it was positioned at the entrance, facing outward. This was no guardian. It was a sentry, ensuring no ill-willed spirits or living intruders dared disturb the king's rest. Contemporary murals at Monte Alban depict rulers wearing jaguar pelts, their thrones flanked by the animal's gaping jaws. The message was clear: challenge the king in life and you face the beast in death. Today, the onyx jaguar sits behind museum glass, its teeth bared in an eternal snarl. Modern visitors often remark how its eyes, two polished discs of pyrite, seem to track movement across the room. Maybe it's a trick of the light, or maybe, like the Zapotec believed, some stones remember their purpose long after the hands that shaped them have turned to dust. Among the golden treasures of Ur's royal tombs, one artifact stands apart not for its size but for its celestial hue. The lapis lazuli bull, carved from a single chunk of deep blue stone, is barely larger than a human hand, yet it carries the weight of Sumerian cosmology. Unearthed from the burial pits of Ur's kings, this tiny figurine wasn't mere decoration. It was a key, a symbolic bridge between the earthly and divine, its color echoing the heavens where the gods resided. To understand its significance is to step into the world of Gilgamesh, where bulls weren't just animals but incarnations of cosmic power. Lapis lazuli was rarer than gold in ancient Mesopotamia. Traded from distant Afghanistan, its flecks of golden pyrite mirrored the night sky, making it the preferred stone for representing deities. The bull, with its muscular curves polished to a glassy sheen, embodies the storm god Ishkur, a deity who controlled rain and fertility, the lifeblood of Sumer's agricultural empire. But there's a darker layer. In the Epic of Gilgamesh, the hero slays the bull of heaven, a creature sent by the goddess Ishtar to punish his arrogance. That mythic bull wasn't just a monster, it was a force of divine retribution. The lapis lazuli bull, buried with kings, may have served a similar role, a compact but potent guardian, ensuring the ruler's passage through the underworld wouldn't provoke the god's wrath. The craftsmanship reveals sacred precision. The bull's horns, once capped in gold leaf, point upward like crescent moons, a nod to Sin, the lunar god who measured time and fate. Its base is drilled with tiny holes, suggesting it was either mounted on a staff for ceremonial processions or sewn onto a burial shroud. Most intriguing are the traces of silver found in its nostrils, possibly remnants of a chain or ring. Could priests have led this symbolic beast in rituals, enacting scenes from Gilgamesh's saga, or did it snort silver threads as an offering to the underworld's gatekeepers? Context deepens the mystery. The bull was found alongside lyres adorned with golden bull heads, their sound boxes inlaid with lapis stripes, proof that music and myth were intertwined in Sumerian funerals. One theory suggests these bulls were avatars for the king himself. In death, as in life, he would take on the bull's strength, facing the trials of the afterlife with the same ferocity Gilgamesh showed in his legendary quest. Today, the bull sits in the British Museum, its blue undimmed by millennia. To modern eyes, it's a delicate artifact, but to the Sumerians it was a concentrate of power, a piece of the sky forged into a creature that could bellow prayers directly into the ears of the gods. Its silence now is deceptive. Hold it up to the light, and those golden pyrite flecks still spark like distant stars, whispering of a time when the boundary between king and deity was as thin as a lapis lazuli veil. Buried alongside one of Europe's most legendary rulers, the ivory chess set of Charlemagne wasn't just a game, it was a battlefield in miniature, a silent strategist's companion meant to serve beyond the grave. Carved from the tusks of long-extinct Syrian elephants, each piece in this 12th century set bears the weight of imperial symbolism. Kings with swords across their laps, bishops clutching staffs like scepters, knights astride steeds frozen mid-charge. But why would a warrior emperor who forged an empire with steel and faith need a chess set for the afterlife? The answer lies in the medieval mind's view of death as a continuation, not an end. Chess wasn't mere entertainment in Charlemagne's era, it was called the king's game for a reason. nobles studied it as training for warfare and statecraft, where every move mirrored real-world tactics. Burying a ruler with a chess set might have been a metaphysical act, ensuring he could keep honing his cunning in the hereafter, outmaneuvering spiritual foes as deftly as he had earthly rivals. The ivory itself held power. Medieval Christians believed it repelled evil, and the set's intricate carvings included crosses hidden in the rook's battlements, subtle armor against darker forces. Yet there's a provocative twist. Some scholars argue this wasn't Charlemagne's personal set at all, but a later creation gifted to his tomb as political theater. The pieces echo Byzantine influences, hinting at the fraught diplomacy between East and West. Could this chess set have been a posthumous peace offering, its ivory pawn standing in for unresolved tensions? Or perhaps a memento mori, reminding visitors that even emperors are ultimately equal before death. The king toppled as easily as the humblest pawn. The set's survival is its own miracle. Unlike gold or jewels, ivory cracks with age, yet these pieces endured centuries in the dank crypt of Aachen Cathedral. Modern restorers found traces of vermilion pigment in the knight's cloaks and flecks of gold leaf on the queen's crowns, remnants of their original vibrance. Touch one today, and you're touching the same grooves where Charlemagne's successors, or maybe the man himself, once plotted their next move. Chess historians note an eerie detail: the set is incomplete. Missing are two pawns, lost to time or theft. It's tempting to imagine them still in play somewhere, moving across a board unseen in a game that never truly ended. After all, in the grand scheme of eternity, what's a 1,000-year pause between turns, the ivory doesn't mind. It knows all games circle back to the same truth, whether on Earth or beyond. Power is always a matter of strategy, and every king eventually meets his checkmate. Among the treasures of China's Han Dynasty tombs, few objects capture the paradox of death and rebirth as hauntingly as the golden cicada's tiny, exquisitely crafted insects placed delicately on the tongues of nobles before burial. These weren't mere ornaments. To the Han elite, these shimmering amulets were instruments of immortality, ensuring the dead could still speak their truths in the afterlife. Imagine the scene: a royal body prepared for eternity, lips parted slightly to cradle a cicada wrought from gold, its wings so finely detailed they seem poised to tremble into song. The choice of a cicada was no accident. In ancient Chinese symbolism, this humble insect was the ultimate emblem of transformation. Born from the earth, cicadas spend years underground before emerging, shedding their husks and taking flight, a perfect metaphor for resurrection. Placing one on the tongue wasn't just poetic, it was alchemy. The Han believed gold possessed life-giving properties, and by fusing it with the cicada's form, they created a bridge between the mortal world and the heavens. The result, a sacred guarantee that the deceased wouldn't be silenced. Even in death, their words would rise like the cicada's song, heard by ancestors and gods alike. Archaeologists have uncovered these golden insects in tombs across China, each one a masterpiece of miniature artistry. Some clasp tiny loops of thread, suggesting they were once sewn onto burial shrouds near the mouth. Others bear cryptic inscriptions along their abdomens, prayers or names etched in characters as fine as spider silk. The most haunting examples come from the tomb of Prince Liu Sheng, where cicadas were found nestled beside jade plugs sealing the body's orifices, part of an elaborate ritual to preserve both flesh and spirit. But the cicada's power went beyond individual voices. They tied into a broader Han obsession with cosmic harmony. Just as cicadas synchronized their songs in summer, the nobles hoped to join the chorus of the universe, their speech aligning with the rhythms of heaven. Philosophers like Dong Zhongshu taught that words spoken with moral purity could influence the natural order, a belief that turned these golden insects into spiritual microphones, amplifying virtue beyond the grave. What did the Han think these cicadas actually did in the afterlife? Perhaps they vibrated with unspoken prayers, translating human language into something the gods could understand. Or maybe they were passports, their golden sheen proving the bearer's worthiness to enter celestial courts. The truth lingers just out of reach, like the echo of a cicada's song fading into the trees. Today, these artifacts rest in museum cases, their silent wings still catching the light. They remind us that for the Han Dynasty, death wasn't an end but a metamorphosis, a moment when the soul, like the cicada, shrugged off its earthly shell and ascended toward something brighter. And if you listen closely, perhaps you can still hear the whisper of wings carrying words across the centuries. In the heart of Teotihuacan's Pyramid of the Feathered Serpent, archaeologists uncovered weapons unlike any other. Obsidian sacrificial knives so sharp they could split a hair lengthwise with a single stroke. These weren't tools of war, but instruments of divine communion, buried alongside rulers who wielded them in ceremonies where blood was the sacred ink that wrote contracts between humanity and the gods. Each blade, forged from volcanic glass black as a moonless night, carried a double edge, one for the flesh, the other for the veil between worlds. Obsidian was more than just stone to the Teotihuacanos. Born from the fury of erupting volcanoes, it embodied the paradoxical union of destruction and creation, a material that could kill, yet also heal when fashioned into surgical tools. The finest sacrificial knives, like those found in royal tombs, were polished to a mirror finish, their surfaces so flawless they reflected the faces of those about to perform the ritual. This wasn't vanity, it was cosmology. To see one's reflection in the blade moments before drawing blood was to confront the duality of existence, life and death, mortal and divine, all balanced on the edge of a single cut. The rituals themselves were choreographed acts of divine theater. Priests, often the rulers themselves, would pierce their tongues, ears, or genitals, letting blood drip onto strips of bark paper later burned as offerings. Smoke carried these petitions skyward, a metaphysical exchange where pain became currency. The knives' shapes held coded meaning, some curved like crescent moons, linking them to the night deities who governed fertility and rainfall. Others bore jagged teeth resembling the gorges of the underworld, designed to mimic the maw of the earth monster Tliloltecutli, ever hungry for sacrificial tribute. But why place these knives in tombs? Teotihuacan's murals offer clues. One depicts a priest-king holding an obsidian blade aloft as serpents of flame and water twist around him, a metaphor for the cyclical nature of sacrifice. Death wasn't an end, it was a transfer of energy, and the knives were conduits. By burying them with rulers, the Teotihuacanos ensured their leaders could continue this sacred work in the afterlife, maintaining cosmic order beyond the grave. Modern experiments reveal the terrifying efficiency of these blades. Obsidian fractures at a molecular level sharper than surgical steel, allowing cuts so precise they scarcely scar. A ruler buried with such a knife didn't just carry a weapon. He held the means to reopen the channels between realms whenever the gods demanded proof of devotion. The most chilling discovery came in 1988, when excavators found a cache of knives arranged in a star pattern around a skeleton, their points inward like the teeth of a celestial maw. Forensic analysis showed traces of human hemoglobin and exotic bird feathers, evidence of final, frenzied rites before the tomb was sealed. Were these the tools of the ruler's own sacrificial send-off, or gifts for deities awaiting his arrival? The obsidian keeps its secrets, but one truth is clear. In Teotihuacan, power wasn't measured in land or gold, but in the willingness to spill what no king could reclaim, his own blood, offered willingly on blades black as the void between the stars. Today, these knives sit in climate-controlled displays, their edges still lethal after 15 centuries. Run a finger along the glass separating you from them, and you'll feel the ghost of their purpose, not just to take life, but to sustain it, one sacred drop at a time. Few artifacts have fueled as much obsession and outright madness as the fabled emerald tablet of Hermes, a slab of green stone said to contain the secrets of the universe itself. Legend places it in the hands of Hermes Trismegistus, a mythical sage who straddled the line between Egyptian god and mortal alchemist, his tomb rumored to hide this radiant relic beneath the sands. Unlike gold or jewels, the tablet's value wasn't in its material but its message, a single cryptic phrase that ignited centuries of pursuit, as above, so below. 4 words that promised power over nature's very fabric if only one could crack their code. The tablet's lore is a labyrinth of contradictions. Some medieval scholars claimed it was literal emerald, carved with Phoenician script that glowed faintly in darkness. Others argued it was a metaphor, its green referring not to color but to the raw, unrefined state of primal matter. The prima materia alchemists sought to purify into gold. The earliest known references appear in Arabic texts from the 8th century, describing it buried in the hands of Hermes himself, fingers curled around it like roots clutching a seed. By the 12th century, European alchemists had translated it into Latin, treating it as a recipe for the philosopher's stone. Kings and popes demanded its wisdom. Newton himself spent years poring over its verses, convinced it held the key to transmutation. But what did it actually say? The tablet's text reads like a riddle wrapped in paradox. Lines like, "The sun is its father, the moon its mother," and "with great cunning it ascends from earth to heaven," seem to describe alchemical processes, perhaps the distillation of mercury or the creation of acids. Yet beneath the chemistry lies deeper mysticism. The "as above, so below" mantra mirrors ancient Egyptian beliefs in cosmic symmetry, where earthly events echoed celestial ones. Was Hermes offering a guide to turning lead into gold, or a map of the soul's journey to enlightenment? The most tantalizing theory ties it to royal tombs. Hermes, often syncretized with Thoth, was the scribe of the gods, the divine record-keeper. If his tablet existed, wouldn't pharaohs have coveted it for their own burials? Some point to the tomb of Alexander the Great, whose sarcophagus was said to glow with an eerie green light when opened centuries later. Others whisper of a hidden chamber beneath the Great Pyramid, where the tablet might still rest beside its guardian's bones. Modern material science casts doubt on an actual emerald slab. The stone is too brittle to survive intact for millennia, but perhaps the truth isn't in the object itself. The tablet's real power lies in its ability to refract through time, revealing new meanings to each era that rediscovers it. To Renaissance alchemists, it was a chemical cookbook. To Newton, a mathematical cipher. Today, some read it as a precursor to quantum physics, where macro and micro worlds mirror one another in uncanny ways. Whether forged by gods or mortals, the Emerald Tablet endures because it speaks to the oldest human obsession, the hunger to unlock nature's hidden rules. Its words, like the green glow of a distant star, remind us that some truths refuse to stay buried no matter how deep the tomb. In the waterlogged soil beneath the ancient Russian city of Novgorod, where the earth preserves what time would normally destroy, archaeologists uncovered a find as fragile as it was revelatory: the silver birch bark scrolls. Tucked inside the tomb of a 10th century Slavic prince, these delicate strips of bark, inscribed with a mix of Cyrillic and older runic symbols, offer a rare glimpse into a world caught between pagan mysticism and encroaching Christianity. Unlike parchment or stone, birch bark was the everyday writing material of medieval ruse, but these particular scrolls were anything but ordinary. Scorched at the edges yet miraculously intact, they seemed to hover between prayer and spell, their words a bridge between two faiths fighting for a prince's soul. The scroll's duality is their fascination. One bears a Christian prayer for protection, the letters painstakingly etched in the new Cyrillic script, likely the work of a monk serving the prince's court. But beside it lies something far older, an incantation to Veles, the horned god of the underworld, his name curled into runes that twist like roots seeking water. This wasn't just hedging spiritual bets, it was cultural alchemy, an attempt to weave the old and new into a single protective charm. The birch bark itself held significance. Slavs believed it carried the spirit of the sacred birch tree, a symbol of renewal and resilience. By folding these strips into the prince's burial shroud, his people may have sought to cloak him in both the mercy of Christ and the raw power of the forest gods. The language itself is a palimpsest of belief. Phrases like, "May Saint Nicholas guard thy rest," bleed into older invocations. "Veils who parts the earth guide him through the black rivers." Even the ink tells a story. The Christian passages are written in soot-based ink, common in monasteries, while the pagan lines bear traces of ochre and crushed charcoal, materials tied to Slavic ritual. One scroll shows a curious hybrid, a cross drawn over a depiction of the world tree, its branches reaching toward heaven while its roots knot into the shape of Veil's horns. Was this a scribe's quiet rebellion, or a desperate attempt to reconcile two irreconcilable worlds? Archaeologists debate whether the prince himself commissioned these scrolls or if they were slipped into his tomb by grieving kin clinging to tradition. The tomb's artifacts add layers to the mystery. A silver cross rested on his chest, but buried beneath his left foot, a deliberate placement, was an iron amulet shaped like a bear's claw, a pagan symbol of strength. The birchbark scrolls, brittle yet defiant, may have been the truest reflection of his era's soul, a time when the old gods whispered in the same breath as the new, and death demanded every available ally. Today, these scrolls are preserved under argon gas, their fragile fibers too volatile for open air. Scholars pore over them with multispectral imaging, revealing faded lines about the crossroads where roads of dust and light meet, perhaps a metaphor for the prince's own journey. In a way, these scrolls did their job too well. They didn't just protect one man's passage, they immortalized the moment when a civilization stood trembling between earth and heaven, its feet in the marsh of tradition, its fingers grasping for the distant star of faith. Gleaming against the chest of a Nubian queen laid to rest over 2,000 years ago, the golden vulture pectoral is more than jewelry. It's a silent sentinel, crafted to guard her heart in death as fiercely as she'd ruled in life. Discovered in the royal cemeteries of Nubia's Kushite kingdom, this masterpiece of gold filigree depicts a vulture with wings outstretched, each feather rendered in such delicate detail they seem to tremble at the slightest breath. But this wasn't just a display of wealth. To the Nubians, the vulture was the ultimate symbol of maternal protection, linked to the goddess Isis herself, who used her wings to shield the dead. Wearing this pectoral, the queen became both ruler and divine guardian, her spiritual authority woven into every thread of gold. The craftsmanship is nothing short of miraculous. Tiny gold wires, thinner than strands of hair, twist into intricate spirals to form the bird's plumage, while its eyes, once inlaid with obsidian, would have gleamed with lifelike intensity. The pectoral's underside bears traces of ancient resin, suggesting it was ritually anointed before burial, perhaps to awaken its protective magic. What's most striking is how the vulture's wings curve to mimic the shape of a mother cradling a child, a deliberate echo of Isis cradling her son Horus. This wasn't just art imitating nature, it was a coded prayer asking the goddess to extend that same fierce love to the queen in the afterlife. Nubia's connection to Isis ran deep. The Kushite rulers saw themselves as her earthly heirs, and their tombs often featured frescoes of the goddess spreading her wings over the deceased. But the golden vulture takes this bond further. It transforms the queen into Isis's living embodiment. Archaeologists found it positioned directly over her sternum, as if the bird's talons gripped not just gold but her very soul. The message was clear: even in death, she would be both protected and protector, a sovereign straddling the worlds of mortals and gods. Modern conservators working on the pectoral made an eerie discovery. Under magnification, they spotted microscopic hieroglyphs etched along the vulture's beak, spells from the Egyptian Book of the Dead, adapted for Nubian beliefs. One phrase recurs like a refrain: "She who flies as darkness falls." Was this a reference to the vulture's nocturnal habits or a poetic nod to the queen's journey through the underworld? The gold itself holds clues. Analysis reveals it was mined from the Nubian desert's richest veins, its purity so high it would have shone like a second sun against the queen's skin. Why place such a masterpiece in the dark of a tomb? The answer lies in Nubian cosmology. Gold wasn't just a metal, it was the flesh of the gods, imperishable and radiant. By fashioning the vulture from this divine material, artisans ensured the queen's guardian would never tarnish, just as her legacy would never fade. Today, the pectoral sits in a Cairo museum, its wings still outstretched in an eternal embrace. Visitors often pause before it, sensing what the Nubians knew all too well. Some bonds of protection aren't even broken by death. Deep in the tomb of Marquis of Sheng, hidden beneath layers of earth for nearly 2,500 years, a celestial orchestra waited in silence. The bronze bells of Marquis, a chime set so precisely tuned it could play the very music of the heavens. Unlike any other artifact from ancient China, this monumental set of 65 bronze bells, ranging from the size of a walnut to that of a small child, wasn't just a display of imperial wealth. It was a sonic map of the cosmos, carefully calibrated to harmonize with the 5 elements, the 12 lunar months, and the 28 constellations of traditional Chinese astronomy. To the ancients, these bells weren't instruments. They were vessels designed to carry the soul of the Marquis through the afterlife on waves of perfect sound. The craftsmanship is a marvel of both art and science. Each bell is cast with dual tones. Strike it at the center, and you hear one pitch. Strike it near the rim, and a second complementary note rings out. The entire set spans 5 octaves, tuned to the same pentatonic scale still used in Chinese classical music today. But here's what defies belief. Despite their age, the bells remain perfectly in tune, their bronze alloy mixed with precise amounts of tin to achieve a resonance that modern metallurgists struggle to replicate. The inscriptions on their surfaces aren't just decorative, they're technical manuals detailing each bell's exact pitch and its place in rituals honoring ancestors or communicating with celestial beings. Why bury such a masterpiece? In the cosmology of China's Warring States period, music was the language of the universe. The Book of Rites describes how proper harmonies could align human affairs with the Tao, the natural order of things. For a ruler like Marquis, death wasn't an end, but a transition to a realm where celestial bureaucracies mirrored earthly ones. His bells were a diplomat's toolkit, meant to ensure his spirit could speak in the correct tonal language when petitioning gods or ancestors. Archaeologists found the bells arranged in 8 rows, mirroring the 8 directions of the Bagua, a sacred symbol representing the fundamental principles of reality. The most haunting discovery came when replicas were struck for the first time in millennia. The tones produced weren't just musical, they generated eerie, cascading overtones that seemed to vibrate through bone. Scholars now believe these harmonics were intentional, designed to mimic the sound of the stars described in ancient texts. One passage from the Zhu Lai mentions royal musicians tuning instruments to the voices of planets, and the Marquis bells may have been crafted to echo Jupiter's deep drones or Venus' high, clear chimes. But the bells' true power lies in their silence as much as their sound. Positioned near the Marquis lacquered coffins, they formed a protective circle, their unplayed presence acting as a sonic ward against malevolent spirits. In Chinese folk belief, evil forces despise harmonious music. The bells, even at rest, may have served as a kind of spiritual fence, their latent resonance keeping chaos at bay. Today, the original bells reside in Hubei's provincial museum, their gold-inlaid dragons and phoenixes still gleaming. Modern musicians have performed ancient rites using replicas, the same melodies that once guided a Marquis soul now floating through concert halls. Listen closely and you'll hear more than notes. You'll hear a 2,500-year-old conversation between earth and sky, a reminder that for the ancients, music wasn't entertainment. It was the rope that tied the mortal world to the divine, and in the darkness of the tomb, the bronze bells of Marquis still hum with that sacred promise. Deep beneath the sun-baked earth of Malta's hypogeum of Hal Saflieni, archaeologists made a discovery that still defies explanation: skulls coated in a thin, shimmering layer of crystal. These aren't the bleached bones of ordinary burials. Each skull, meticulously polished and dusted with crushed calcite, catches the faintest light like frost on stone, their hollow eye sockets staring through millennia. Found nestled in the labyrinthine chambers of this 5,000-year-old subterranean temple, the crystal skulls blur the line between relic and ritual, raising questions that cut to the heart of Neolithic belief systems. Were these the remains of venerated leaders preserved as sacred conduits to the spirit world, or something far more unsettling: ceramic vessels for voices beyond the grave? The hypogeum itself is no ordinary tomb. Carved from solid limestone over centuries, its echoing halls and womb-like chambers suggest a space where the boundaries between life and death dissolved. The skulls, clustered in niches carved into the walls, show signs of deliberate modification, their surfaces smoothed until they gleamed, then brushed with a paste of powdered calcite mixed with clay. Under ultraviolet light, traces of ochre pigment emerge in spirals and zigzags, patterns mirrored in the temple's murals. This wasn't haphazard decoration. The crystal coating may have been intended to refract light during solstice ceremonies, when shafts of sunlight pierced the hypogeum's deepest chambers, making the skulls appear to glow from within. But why crystal? To Malta's temple builders, stone wasn't inert, it pulsed with latent energy. The island's megalithic temples align with celestial events, their altars carved from stone that resonates at specific frequencies when struck. Some researchers suggest the calcite dust was chosen for its piezoelectric properties, a mineral that generates electric charge under pressure. Were these skulls tactile oracles meant to transmit messages when handled by priests? Folk tales recorded in the 19th century speak of the hypogeum's speaking bones, relics that whispered prophecies to those who dared hold them in the dark. The skull's origins deepen the mystery. Forensic analysis reveals conflicting data. Some belong to men over 60, their bones showing signs of healed combat wounds, while others are disturbingly small, belonging to adolescents or even children. One theory posits they're trophies from a warrior cult, their crystal sheen a form of posthumous honor. Another argues they represent an ancestral lineage, with each generation adding a skull to the collective choir. The most provocative clue lies in their placement. The crystal skulls were found alongside figurines of obese, genderless figures, their bodies contorted in poses that mirror the fetal position of skeletal remains. Modern attempts to replicate the crystal coating have yielded eerie results. When freshly applied, the calcite layer is nearly transparent, but over decades it clouds into a milky film, a transformation that would have been visible to Neolithic observers. Did they interpret this as the gradual petrification of the soul, or as a veil thinning between worlds? The hypogeum's acoustics add another layer. Chanting in certain chambers causes the skulls to vibrate at frequencies that induce trance states, suggesting they might have been used in auditory rituals. Today, the crystal skulls sit in climate-controlled silence, their surfaces dulled by time, but stand in the hypogeum's lowest chamber, where the air hums with the weight of centuries, and you can almost hear the echoes of what might have been, a chorus of ancestors, their voices trapped in stone, waiting for the right moment to speak again. Whether royal relics or ritual objects, they remain Malta's most haunting enigma. Not quite alive, not quite dead, but suspended somewhere in between. Tucked among the gold-laden skeletons of Mycenae's royal shaft graves, tiny wonders catch the light golden grasshoppers, their delicate wings forever poised mid-leap. These insect pendants, no larger than a thumbnail, might seem like whimsical trinkets at first glance, but to the Mycenaean elite who wore them into the grave, they were powerful talismans, embodiments of a belief that death was merely a momentary pause, a husk left behind before the soul, like a grasshopper, sprang free. The craftsmanship alone speaks volumes. Each grasshopper's body is rendered in meticulous filigree, their legs bent as if ready to propel them skyward. Some clutch tiny golden seeds between their mandibles, a nod to cyclical renewal. Found draped around the necks of warriors and noblewomen alike, these pendants weren't just decorative. Grasshoppers, with their miraculous ability to shed exoskeletons and emerge anew, mirrored the Mycenaean vision of the afterlife, a realm where the soul, unshackled from its mortal shell, could ascend to the halls of heroes. The gold itself wasn't arbitrary. Its incorruptible sheen symbolized the undying essence of the spirit, a material as eternal as the gods. This symbolism didn't vanish with the collapse of Mycenae. Centuries later, Greek myths would echo the grasshopper's significance. The tale of Tithonus, granted immortality without eternal youth, paints a haunting parallel, transformed into a cricket, a close cousin to the grasshopper, his endless chirping a reminder of life persisting beyond decay. Even the philosopher Pythagoras, teaching about the soul's transmigration, used the grasshopper as a metaphor for rebirth. The Mycenaeans, it seems, had distilled an idea that would ripple through Greek thought for generations. Immortality wasn't about freezing life, but about transformation. Archaeologists uncovered these pendants in graves filled with weapons, chariots, and masks of beaten gold objects meant to assert status in death as in life. Yet the grasshoppers stand apart. Unlike swords or diadems, they carry no martial pride. Instead, they whisper of vulnerability and hope, tiny golden prayers for a second chance. One pendant, found in grave Circle A, bears microscopic etchings along its wings, a spiraling motif seen later in Minoan frescoes representing the soul's journey. Was this a shared language of belief, or did the Mycenaeans adapt older symbols to their own ends? The most poignant detail lies in their placement. These grasshoppers weren't hidden in chests or tucked beneath armor. They were worn openly, resting against the sternum, close to the breath, close to the heart. In a culture obsessed with heroic glory, where death in battle was the ultimate aspiration, the grasshoppers suggest a quieter, more universal longing. Even the mightiest king, surrounded by treasures and armed for the underworld's battles, still clung to the fragile hope of something lighter, something that could leap free when the body could not. Today, these pendants gleam behind museum glass, their gold undimmed by time. They remind us that the Mycenaeans, for all their warlike grandeur, shared a fear and a faith as old as humanity itself. Not just the desire to be remembered, but the dream of truly escaping death's grip, if only for one more spring, one more song in the tall grass where the golden insects still dance. In the cool, dark recesses of Hatshepsut's tomb, where most treasures gleamed with the expected brilliance of gold and lapis, one artifact stood apart, a simple yet profound object carved from polished ebony, its surface smooth as silk. The ebony ankh, a rare wooden symbol of eternal life, carries a quiet defiance. While most pharaohs clutched golden crosses in their mummified hands, Hatshepsut, Egypt's most formidable female ruler, chose a material as enduring as her legacy, yet unassuming in its elegance. This wasn't just an anomaly, it was a statement. In a civilization that equated gold with the sun god's flesh, why would a pharaoh, especially one who broke every convention to seize power, opt for the subdued richness of ebony? The ankh itself is a masterpiece of symbolism, its looped top representing the Nile's eternal cycle, and its crossbar, echoing the horizon where life and death met, were traditionally forged from precious metals. But Hatshepsut's ebony version whispers of something deeper. Ebony, imported from distant Kush, was rarer than gold in some eras, a luxury reserved for the most sacred objects. Its deep black hue wasn't just decorative, it mirrored the fertile silt of the Nile, the very essence of regeneration. Unlike gold, which reflected divine light, ebony absorbed it, holding secrets in its grain. To hold this ankh was to grasp the paradox of Hatshepsut's reign, a ruler who wielded power like a king but whose funerary choices hinted at a subtler, earthbound wisdom. Contrast this with the golden ankh of Tutankhamun, glittering and unyielding. Where his cross shouted permanence, hers murmured endurance. Gold was the metal of gods, but ebony was the wood of the earth, tied to growth, to roots, to the quiet persistence of life pushing through cracks in stone. Scholars speculate that Hatshepsut, who often depicted herself as both king and queen in statuary, might have seen the ebony ankh as a bridge between realms. The golden ankhs promised resurrection through celestial favor. Hers suggested rebirth through the land itself, a nod to her famed expeditions to Punt, which brought back not just wealth but exotic materials that enriched Egypt's spiritual lexicon. Then there's the tactile difference. Gold is cold, heavy, a weighty reminder of the divine burden. Ebony, though dense, warms to the touch, its grain telling the story of the tree it once was. Perhaps Hatshepsut, who famously donned the false beard of kingship but also commissioned reliefs of herself as a sphinx nurturing the land, wanted an ankh that felt alive in her grasp. The wood's organic nature might have symbolized her unique duality, a ruler who balanced masculine authority with feminine nurture, whose reign brought prosperity through trade and agriculture as much as conquest. The most tantalizing clue lies in the ankh's hidden inscriptions. Under magnification, faint hieroglyphs reveal a phrase rarely seen on royal grave goods: "I am the roots and the crown." Was this a poetic assertion of her legitimacy or a deeper meditation on mortality? Gold doesn't decay, but would even ebony slowly yields to time. In choosing it, Hatshepsut might have been acknowledging the inevitable, not with resignation, but with the quiet confidence of a ruler who knew her legacy would outlast any material. After all, it wasn't the ankh's luster that mattered, but the hand that held it and the life it represented. Today, the ebony ankh sits in Cairo's museum, its surface dulled by millennia yet still radiating a solemn dignity. It doesn't dazzle like Tutankhamun's gold. Instead, it invites you to lean closer, to ponder the woman who chose it, a pharaoh who rewrote the rules of power, only to whisper her defiance in the language of wood and shadow. In that choice, she left us a puzzle more enduring than any golden relic. Sometimes eternity isn't about shining brightest, but about sinking deepest. Among the treasures of Viking-era chieftains buried along the Baltic coastline, few objects blur the line between wealth and magic as strikingly as the amber coin's discs of fossilized resin, golden as mead in sunlight, threaded onto necklaces or scattered like sacred tokens across the chests of the dead. Unlike silver or bronze, these weren't mere currency for the afterlife. Amber carried the weight of the sun itself, a substance the Norse believed was the tears of Freya, goddess of love and war hardened by the sea. To wear amber into the grave was to clutch a piece of the divine, a charm as practical as it was mystical. The coin's origins tell a story of far-reaching trade and reverence. Baltic amber, washed ashore after centuries trapped in seabed sediments, was gathered by coastal tribes and painstakingly polished into uniform discs, each about the size of a thumbnail. Historical accounts describe how Viking traders would journey south, exchanging furs and walrus ivory for these radiant beads, which held greater value than metal in some northern realms. But their worth wasn't just economic. When buried, amber's electrostatic properties rubbing it generates a charge likely convinced the Norse it held latent energy. Imagine a chieftain's funeral. As his body was laid to rest, attendants might have whispered how the amber at his throat could attract blessings as surely as it drew straw or feathers when stroked with cloth. The coin's dual role emerges in their placement. Some were drilled with holes and strung into heavy pectorals, resting directly over the heart, a clear spiritual safeguard. Others were found stacked like miniature towers atop skeletons' closed eyelids, possibly to open the dead to visions of Valhalla. A hoard discovered in Gotland included coins etched with runes spelling Li Nifr, sea knife, a poetic nod to amber's journey from ocean to hand. These inscriptions suggest the discs were more than passive offerings. They were active talismans, their words meant to guide or protect. Amber's preservative qualities deepened its mystique. Encased within some coins are ancient insects or plant fragments, trapped mid-flight as if frozen by time. The Norse, who saw the world as a web of fate, may have interpreted these inclusions as omens. A fly forever buzzing toward the sun, a leaf suspended between growth and decay. Modern science confirms amber's antibacterial properties, which could slow a body's decay, a practical benefit the ancients might have perceived as supernatural stasis, a pause between worlds. The most poignant finds come from children's graves. In one, a single amber coin was clasped in a small fist, its edges worn smooth from handling. Was this a plaything in life, repurposed as a comfort in death, or a parent's desperate gamble, hoping Freya herself would recognize the token and guide their child gently into the afterlife? Either way, these coins remind us that the Vikings' relationship with death wasn't all battle cries and glory. Sometimes it was the quiet click of amber beads, counting out prayers in a language only the gods could hear. Today, these coins glow in museum cases, their warmth undimmed by centuries. They challenge our modern divide between commerce and creed, proof that for the Norse, even money could be holy, and every exchange, whether with mortals or gods, was part of the same endless saga. Resting atop a velvet cushion in the Cathedral of Monza, the Iron Crown of Lombardy gleams with the quiet weight of centuries, not just as a medieval artifact, but as a sacred bridge between earth and divinity. What sets this regal circlet apart from other royal relics isn't its slender iron band or its glittering gemstones, but what lies hidden within, a single nail whispered to have been pulled from the cross of Christ himself. Forged in the early Middle Ages, this crown became the ultimate fusion of heavenly authority and earthly power, passed from ruler to ruler like a covenant written in gold and iron. The crown's design is deceptively simple, a delicate iron hoop encased in gold, studded with sapphires, garnets, and pearls in a pattern resembling celestial constellations. But its true significance lies in that inner band, which medieval chroniclers claimed was hammered from one of the nails used in the crucifixion. According to tradition, the Empress Helena, mother of Constantine the Great, discovered the true cross in Jerusalem and divided its nails, sending one to her son to be reforged into his helmet for divine protection in battle. Centuries later, the Lombards, a Germanic people who ruled much of Italy, reshaped this sacred iron into a crown, merging Christian symbolism with their own warrior ethos. To wear it wasn't just to claim a throne, it was to be girded with the very metal that had touched divinity. Kings and emperors fought bitterly for the right to don this relic. Charlemagne, the towering figure of medieval Europe, was crowned with it in 800 AD, solidifying his claim as successor to Rome's emperors. Napoleon, ever the theatrical conqueror, placed it on his own head in 1805, declaring himself King of Italy while deliberately echoing the rituals of his predecessors. Each coronation transformed the crown from a static artifact into a living conduit of legitimacy, its iron band serving as both spiritual armor and political propaganda. Yet the Iron Crown's journey wasn't confined to grand ceremonies. It survived plundering armies hidden away in monastery vaults during invasions. During World War II, it was secretly moved multiple times to evade Nazi looting, tucked into mattresses and church altars by priests who understood its symbolic power. Modern scientific analysis adds another layer of intrigue. While the outer gold and gems date to the 6th century, the iron band shows traces of silver and gold filings, consistent with medieval descriptions of sacred nails being blended with precious metals to prevent corrosion. What makes this crown extraordinary isn't just its alleged connection to the crucifixion, but how it embodies the medieval worldview. Iron, a metal of war and labor, was sanctified by its contact with the divine, then encased in gold, a metaphor for the belief that earthly rulers derived their power from heaven. The gems weren't mere decoration. Their colors held meaning: blue sapphires for celestial wisdom, red garnets for martyrdom, pearls for purity. Even the crown's size, too small to fit most adult heads, suggests it was meant to hover above the brow rather than rest snugly, a visible reminder that sovereignty was both a burden and a blessing. Today, the Iron Crown rests in Monza's treasury, its nails rusted slightly but its legend untarnished. Pilgrims still line up to glimpse it through bulletproof glass, drawn by the same mystique that compelled kings to kneel before it. Whether the iron truly came from Calvary may never be proven, but the crown's real power lies in the stories it carries: centuries of rulers who believed that to wear it was to touch the divine, if only for a moment. And perhaps that's the greater truth: some relics aren't measured by their material, but by the weight of the faith they inspire. Beneath the volcanic stone foundations of Tenochtitlan's Templo Maya, where Aztec emperors were laid to rest with the trappings of divine power, one artifact coils with silent ferocity: the turquoise mosaic serpent. Stretching over 5 feet in length, this sinuous masterpiece of iridescent turquoise and shell isn't just a burial offering. It's a frozen moment of metamorphosis, embodying the Aztec universe's most profound paradox. The serpent, known as Zucotl in Nahuatl, wasn't merely a decorative motif. To the Mexica people, it was the living embodiment of fire and time, a creature that could both forge and devour worlds with the same flick of its tail. Every tessera of this mosaic whispers of sacred labor. Hundreds of turquoise tiles, imported from distant mines in what's now the American Southwest, were painstakingly shaped and glued with pine resin onto a cedarwood frame. The effect is hypnotic: light dances across its surface as if the serpent's scales are rippling, an illusion of movement frozen for eternity. Shell fragments form its bared fangs and the whites of its eyes, giving the impression of a creature caught mid-strike. But this isn't just artistry meant to awe. The material choices are deeply symbolic. Turquoise, or Ziuhuatl, was linked to fire and the life-giving sun, while the spondylus shell represented water and fertility. Together, they mirror the Aztec belief in the necessary tension of opposites: destruction and renewal, drought and flood, all bound in the serpent's twisting form. The duality runs deeper. Zucotl wasn't just any serpent, it was the weapon of Huitzilopochtli, the sun god, who used its fiery body to dismember his sister Coyolxauhqui, the moon goddess. This myth wasn't just a story, it was reenacted in bloodier terms during imperial funerals. Historical accounts describe how sacrificial victims were dressed as Zucotl before their hearts were extracted, their bodies tumbling down the pyramid steps like the dismembered moon. By placing this mosaic serpent in a ruler's tomb, the Aztecs weren't just honoring a deity. They were equating the emperor's journey to the sun's own passage through the underworld each night, a trial by fire that would end in rebirth at dawn. Yet the serpent's posture holds another clue. Unlike the rigid symmetry of European heraldic beasts, this serpent curves dynamically, its body forming a near circle with its tail in its mouth. This isn't accidental. The Ouroboros-like shape echoes the Aztec conception of time as cyclical, where each era ended in cataclysm only to begin anew. The emperor, wrapped in this serpent's embrace, became both the sacrificer and the sacrificed, the devourer and the reborn. Modern conservators discovered traces of hematite dust in the mosaic's crevices, a mineral linked to blood rituals suggesting the serpent might have been fed with sacrificial offerings before burial, its hunger temporarily sated for the journey ahead. What did the Aztecs believe this serpent actually did in the tomb? Codices depict Zucotl as a psychopomp, a guide through Mictlan's 9 levels of the underworld. Its turquoise scales would glow in the darkness, lighting the emperor's way past wind-scoured plains and obsidian-bladed mountains. The shell fragments, placed deliberately at the serpent's throat and belly, may have served as literal stepping stones, small points of coolness in the underworld's heat, echoing the mythic islands of safety in the Aztec creation story. Today, the reconstructed serpent dominates museum galleries, its colors undimmed by centuries. Visitors often circle it, transfixed by the way its empty eyes seem to follow movement. Maybe it's a trick of the light, or maybe, as the Aztecs believed, some artifacts never truly sleep. They wait, coiled in the dark, for the next cycle to begin. Glittering under the torchlight of a Chola king's burial chamber, the pearl-encrusted dagger of Roger isn't just a weapon, it's a paradox forged in steel and gemstones. At first glance, the blade is a masterpiece of martial artistry. Its razor-sharp edge could cleave armor, while its hilt shimmers with hundreds of seed pearls arranged in lotus patterns, interspersed with rubies that pulse like embers in the dark. But this dagger was never meant for battle. Instead, it was a key, one that unlocked the final, sacred act of a Hindu monarch's journey, ensuring his passage from warrior to deity. The craftsmanship alone is staggering. Each pearl, meticulously drilled and threaded onto gold wire, represents a drop of soma, the nectar of immortality. The rubies mirror the third eye of Shiva, the destroyer and regenerator, while the blade's spine is etched with Tamil script invoking the king's divine right. Unlike European ceremonial swords, which often prioritized grandeur over function, this dagger balances both. Its balance so precise it could still deliver a lethal strike despite its ornamental purpose. That duality is intentional. In the Chola worldview, a king's power didn't end with death, it transformed. This dagger was the instrument of that metamorphosis. Ritual context reveals its true significance. Hindu funerary texts describe the Antyesti ceremony, where weapons are placed alongside rulers not as relics but as active participants. The pearl-encrusted dagger had a specific role. Its blade was used symbolically to sever the king's earthly attachments, while the gems acted as cosmic anchors. Priests would trace the dagger's edge along the deceased's ceremonial armor, mimicking the separation of soul from body. Pearls, believed to hold lunar energy, guided the spirit through the dark waters of the afterlife, while rubies associated with the sun promised rebirth. But the dagger's most haunting role came post-burial. Chronicles from Roger's court describe how his dagger was later retrieved during the Pitru Paksha ceremonies, a fortnight when ancestors are honored. The blade, now considered infused with the king's essence, was used to cut ritual offerings, literally feeding his spirit through symbolic gestures. This cyclical use, first in severance, then in sustenance, reflects the Hindu concept of samskara, where death isn't an end but a transition requiring precise rites. Modern metallurgical analysis adds another layer. The blade's steel, sourced from the Deccan's finest forges, shows traces of mercury and turmeric, substances used in both weapon tempering and sacred purification. The pearls, when examined under magnification, reveal microscopic carvings of the syllable Am, evidence that even materials were consecrated down to the smallest detail. This wasn't just a decorated weapon, it was a consecrated object, its every element vibrating with purpose. What does the dagger tell us about Roger's legacy? The Cholas didn't just build temples, they saw themselves as living bridges between mortal and divine realms. By burying this dagger, they ensured their king retained his agency in death, armed not for war, but for the ultimate test, navigating the cosmic currents to emerge as something greater. Today, the dagger rests in Chennai's museum, its pearls dulled but its edge still keen. Stand before it long enough and you might glimpse the reflection of a king who understood. Some blades don't conquer land. They cut a path to eternity. Among the shattered remnants of Empress Theodora's sarcophagus, archaeologists made a discovery as delicate as it was perplexing: shards of glass so thin they seemed to dissolve in sunlight. Their edges curved into shapes that revealed a long-lost treasure when pieced together. This was no ordinary funerary offering. The fragments formed the silhouette of a unicorn, its slender neck arched in perpetual grace, its single horn a spiral of cobalt blue glass threaded with gold. The very existence of such an artifact in a Byzantine empress's tomb raises startling questions. Why a unicorn, and why crafted from something as fragile as glass, a material that defies the very concept of eternity? In the Byzantine world, unicorns weren't whimsical creatures of fable, they were potent Christian symbols. Medieval bestiaries described them as untamable beasts that could only be captured by a virgin, an allegory for Christ's incarnation. Theodora, a former actress who rose to become one of history's most formidable empresses, might have seen the unicorn as a mirror of her own journey, an outsider who became sacred through transformation. The glass itself is a marvel. Analysis reveals it was blown using techniques from Roman Syria, where artisans manipulated molten glass into shapes so intricate they were said to capture fragments of the divine. The gold threading the horn wasn't just decorative, it was a deliberate echo of the mosaics adorning Constantinople's Hagia Sophia, where Theodora's likeness shimmered beside her husband Justinian, forever bathed in celestial light. But the unicorn's fragility whispers of darker truths. Theodora's reign was marked by upheaval, plague, riots, and relentless political scheming. Glass, for all its beauty, is brittle. Was this a memento mori, a reminder that even empresses are fleeting, or something more defiant? Byzantine funerary rites often included breaking rituals, objects deliberately fractured to release their spiritual essence. The shattered unicorn might not have been an accident of time, but a calculated act of liberation, ensuring Theodora's spirit could ride this mythical steed into the afterlife. The placement of the shards adds another layer. They were found near Theodora's hands, as if she'd clutched them in her final moments. Historians note her legendary defiance during the Nika riots when she refused to flee the city, declaring, "Purple makes a fine shroud." Perhaps this glass unicorn was her final act of rebellion, a refusal to be memorialized in gold or jewels, but in something luminous and transient, a creature of myth made tangible just long enough to carry her beyond mortal reach. Today, the reconstructed unicorn sits in Istanbul's archaeological museums, its cracks meticulously preserved. Stand close, and the gold in its horn still catches the light, casting spirals on the walls like a phantom galloping through time. Theodora, ever the enigma, left no explanation. Only this, a fragile, radiant beast, proof that some power lies not in lasting forever, but in burning brilliantly enough to be remembered. In the highland ruins of Iximshe, the last capital of the Kakchakal Maya, a throne of living wood transformed by time into something far stranger waits in silence. Carved from the trunk of a sacred ceiba tree, this ruler's seat has undergone a metamorphosis no artisan could replicate. Its once supple grain slowly replaced by stone, its surface now cold and heavy with the weight of centuries. To the modern eye, it appears frozen mid-transformation, caught between the organic and the eternal. But to the Maya, this petrification wasn't decay. It was fulfillment, the throne becoming what it was always meant to be, a bridge between kings and the ancestors who had turned to stone before them. The throne's material tells its own story. Native to Mesoamerica, the ceiba was considered the world tree, its roots digging into the underworld while its branches cradled the heavens. A ruler seated upon it didn't just hold court, he anchored the cosmic order. Yet the petrification process adds eerie depth. Mineral-rich waters seeping through Iximshe's volcanic soil gradually replaced the wood cells with silica, molecule by molecule, until the throne became a geological record of time itself. The patterns in the stone swirls that mimic the ceiba's original growth rings hold a haunting beauty, like a fingerprint half erased by the ages. Local legends whisper that this wasn't an accident of nature. Kakchakal elders speak of alcuks, ancestors who grew weary of flesh and chose to turn to stone, their essence lingering to guide the living. The throne, they say, followed the same path, not abandoned but advanced. Spanish chronicles from the 16th century describe ceremonies where rulers would pour offerings of honey and ground jade into the throne's cracks. feeding it as one might nourish an elder. Modern geologists confirm traces of these substances deep in the stone's pores, evidence of rituals spanning generations. What did the Maya believe this petrified throne could do? Glyphs at Iximshe hint at its role in accession rites. Newly crowned rulers would sit upon it for 3 days and nights without food, a trial meant to fuse their life force with the stone's endurance. Some carvings depict thrones sprouting roots into the earth, suggesting the petrified seat was seen as literally tapping into ancestral wisdom. The most striking detail is on the throne's backrest, a barely visible relief of a face, its features smoothed by time. Infrared imaging reveals it was once an elaborate portrait, likely of the throne's original occupant, meant to merge with the ruler who sat against it back to back in symbolic communion. The throne's final fate adds poignancy. When Spanish forces stormed Iximshe in 1524, they recorded burning the city's wooden idols, but the petrified throne was left untouched, either overlooked or deemed inert. In reality, it may have been protected by Catholic priests who understood its true nature. Today, the throne sits under a protective canopy at the site, its surface cool to the touch even in the midday heat. Visitors sometimes place their palms against it, half expecting to feel a heartbeat. Perhaps they're not wrong. In Maya cosmology, stone wasn't the opposite of life. It was life condensed, slowed to a pace mortal eyes couldn't follow. The throne's transformation wasn't an end, but an evolution. From wood to stone, from seat to sentinel, from furniture to ancestor. Stand before it now, and you're not looking at a relic. You're witnessing a slow, centuries-long exhale, a king's final act of sovereignty, written not in blood or gold, but in the patient language of the earth itself. Buried beneath the rolling hills of modern-day Georgia, near the shores of the Black Sea, golden treasures whisper of a legend that once bridged myth and history, the Golden Fleece of Colchis. For centuries, this fabled artifact was dismissed as pure fantasy, the centerpiece of Jason and the Argonauts' epic quest. But recent archaeological discoveries in the ancient kingdom of Colchis suggest something startling. The fleece may have been more than a poet's invention. Among the grave goods of Colchian royalty, excavators uncovered sheepskins strewn with gold flakes, their surfaces shimmering like captured sunlight. These weren't merely decorative, they were tools of an ancient craft, hinting at a reality behind the myth that's as fascinating as the legend itself. The connection begins with geography. Colchis, a wealthy kingdom rich in gold deposits, was famed for its advanced metallurgy. Historians like Strabo described locals using sheepskins to pan for gold in mountain streams, a technique still practiced today in some regions. The fleece would be submerged in sediment-laden water, its wool trapping tiny gold particles while allowing lighter debris to wash away. Over time, these skins would glint with flakes, transforming humble wool into something resembling the mythical fleece. But for the Colchians, these golden skins held deeper significance. Buried alongside rulers in elaborate tombs, they symbolized both earthly wealth and divine favor, a king's rightful claim to the land's bounty even in death. One remarkable find in the Vanni necropolis makes the case stronger. Here, archaeologists unearthed a noblewoman's grave containing a sheepskin cloak dotted with thousands of gold appliques shaped like rams' heads. The arrangement wasn't random. Each golden ram faced inward, forming a spiral that mirrored the constellation Aries. This celestial link is telling. In Greek myth, the golden fleece originated from a flying ram sent by the gods whose hide became a sacred relic. The Colchians, it seems, wove their own stars into these funerary garments, merging practical gold gathering with cosmic symbolism. Yet the fleece's legend grew darker in royal burial contexts. Some tombs contained skins stretched over wooden frames, their interiors lined with human teeth and bone fragments, evidence of grisly rituals where the fleece may have doubled as a shroud for sacrificial victims. Greek accounts speak of Colchian kings hanging these skins in sacred groves guarded by serpentine priests. Modern excavations near Kutaisi revealed just such a site, a temple complex with stone pedestals grooved to hold fleeces surrounded by serpent motifs. Whether these were offerings to chthonic deities or displays of royal authority, the message was clear: the fleece wasn't passive wealth, it was alive with ritual power. What does this mean for Jason's quest? The myth may preserve fragments of real Bronze Age diplomacy. Colchis controlled vital gold trade routes, and Greek colonies along the Black Sea coveted access. A quest for the fleece could symbolize negotiations or raids for metallurgical secrets. The legendary fleece's placement on a dragon-guarded tree might encode the Colchians' practice of suspending skins in temples to dry, their undulating folds resembling coiled serpents when seen by firelight. Even Medea, the Colchian princess who aids Jason, finds echoes in priestesses buried with gold working tools, their tombs richer than kings. The truth, as always, lies in layers. The Golden Fleece was likely both real and mythical, a tool of industry, a symbol of sovereignty, and eventually a mirror for cultures projecting their desires onto the distant East. Today, these gold-streaked skins rest in Tbilissi's museums, their fibers brittle with age. But look closely, and you can almost see the Argonauts not at magic, but at a craft so ingenious it blurred the line between earth and legend. From golden jade suits promising eternal preservation to terracotta armies standing guard for millennia, these 30 cryptic burial objects share a single silent confession: humanity's refusal to surrender to oblivion. Whether it's the Aztecs' obsidian mirrors reflecting futures beyond the grave, or the Byzantine empress's glass unicorns shattering the illusion of permanence, every culture has whispered its defiance against the dark through objects meant to endure. The Vikings' amber coins, warm as living breath in frozen earth, and the Sumerians' lapis lazuli bull, carved from the night sky itself, prove that immortality takes as many forms as there are civilizations to imagine it. Even in their strangeness, the elongated Paracas skulls, the petrified Maya throne, these artifacts pulse with the same urgent question: if not the body, then surely something of us must remain. What's most revealing isn't the craftsmanship or the materials, but the contradictions woven through them. The Han Dynasty's golden cicadas, poised to sing with borrowed breath, sit beside Teotihuacan's blood-stained sacrificial knives, one culture betting on transformation, the other on payment in kind. The Iron Crown of Lombardy binds sacred nail to kingly brow, while Hatshepsut's ebony ankh chooses the quiet resilience of wood over gold. These aren't just funeral offerings, they're philosophical arguments etched in jade and obsidian, each claiming to have cracked the code of what lasts. Yet for all we've uncovered, the earth still guards its deepest secrets. Hidden chambers may lie undisturbed beneath the Great Pyramid, waiting to rewrite what we know of death's rituals. The Amber Room's ghostly panels could still shimmer in some salt mine vault. And who's to say Alexander's tomb doesn't hold Hermes' fabled emerald tablet, glowing faintly after 2,000 years? Every one of these objects began as someone's answer to mortality. Now they're questions posed to us, so tell me, which of these relics speaks loudest to you? Is there a tomb out there that might rewrite the story? Drop your theories below, and who knows, the next great discovery might just begin with a comment and a spark of curiosity. After all, the search for forever isn't over. It's just waiting for the right hands to dig deeper.